My pastor husband, Caleb, got Autumn from our church pregnant while I weighed 84 pounds recovering from cancer. But what almost killed me wasn't the cancer. My name is Claire. I'm 48 years old. And this is the story of how I survived cancer, but almost didn't survive the man who swore to love me in sickness and in health. It's the story of how I drank for 12 years, trying to erase the pain, how I tried to kill myself twice, and how eventually I found a small house in the California mountains where I finally learned to breathe again. But before getting there, I need to take you back to the beginning, because every tragedy starts with a story that seems perfect. And mine was so beautiful that to this day I wonder if any part of it was real. I grew up in East Los Angeles, daughter of immigrants. My mother, Rosa, came from Mexico as a teenager with my grandparents, looking for a better life. She got a job cleaning mansions in Beverly Hills. She'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, take 2 buses, spend the day on her knees scrubbing floors for rich people, come back at 7 at night with her hands cracked from all the chemicals. My father, Vincent, was a union electrician. Good salary, benefits, but he traveled for weeks at a time installing electrical systems at construction sites across the state. And when my father traveled, my mother drank. Not every day, but every other day, like a broken clock. My sister Val, my brother Theo, and I grew up never knowing which version of our mother would be home when we got back from school. The one who sang songs in Spanish and made tortillas, or the one who stumbled over furniture, knocked over glasses, and collapsed on the living room floor, unable to get up. I was ashamed, very ashamed. When friends knocked on the door to call me, I'd pretend I wasn't home. I'd wear the same clothes 2 days in a row because my mother had forgotten to wash them. I'd take a peanut butter sandwich every day because it was the only food that was always in the pantry. And at night, my siblings and I would stay awake listening to her cry in her room, or scream alone, or just silence. The heavy silence of someone passed out on the couch. You know what my childhood dream was? It wasn't to go to Disneyland. It wasn't to get a new bike or a video game. It was for my mother to stop drinking. Just that. While other kids wrote letters to Santa asking for toys, I'd close my eyes at night and pray to a God I didn't even know existed. Please, make her stop. Please. At 13, I met Owen, my first boyfriend. He was 17, always messy brown hair, crooked smile, played guitar. He was kind to me, made me laugh, would take me for milkshakes after school. We'd share the earphones from his Walkman listening to Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. He made me forget, for a few hours, the chaos that was my home. For the first time, I felt seen, loved. I was getting ready on a Friday, January 11th, 1992, when a friend knocked on my door. Owen was coming to pick me up, but the friend was pale, shaking. Claire, something happened. Owen crashed his car on the I-10. He didn't make it. My world collapsed. I was 14 years old. Owen would be buried on Saturday, the day he would turn 18. I didn't know anything about death. We had no religion, didn't go to church. I didn't understand where he had gone, if he had gone anywhere, if he still existed somehow. People tried to comfort me with empty phrases. He's in a better place. God needed another angel. But nothing made sense. Nothing lessened the pain that seemed to crush me from the inside. That's when my aunt and uncle, who had started attending an evangelical church, took me along. Calvary Chapel in Orange County. And there, for the first time, someone explained death to me in a way that didn't leave me even more desperate. They talked about heaven, about hope, about reunion. They said death wasn't the end. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning in despair. I clung to that church, to that community, to that promise that there was something bigger than the pain. And it was there, 3 years later, in September 1994, at a friend's wedding, that I met Caleb. I was 17 years old. He was 20. He was studying to become a pastor at Biola University. I was sitting alone on the back porch of the house where the wedding was happening, still kind of lost, still sad about Owen, and he simply sat down next to me without asking permission. "Are you okay?" he asked, but not in that automatic way people ask. He really wanted to know. And for the first time since Owen's death, I didn't lie. "No," I said, and my voice came out broken. "I'm not." He didn't try to fix me, didn't quote Bible verses, didn't give me ready-made answers, just stayed there, in silence, for almost an hour. And in that silence, something inside me calmed down. Caleb had kind eyes, a low and steady voice, big and secure hands. He was everything my life wasn't. Stable, organized, predictable, reliable. When he finally spoke, it was to tell me about his family. His mother, Margaret, who made breakfast every day at 7 o'clock sharp. His father, who read the newspaper at the table while having coffee. The house that smelled like cinnamon cake and lavender. Nobody yelled. Nobody broke dishes. Nobody passed out drunk on the couch. I heard all that and thought, this is it. This is how a family should be. This is what I want. And when I looked at Caleb, with his calm smile and kind eyes, I thought, this is who I want to build this with. 20 days later, we were dating. Too fast, I know. Reckless. But I was 17 years old, emotionally wounded, and he seemed like the answer to everything that hurt inside me. He was intelligent, had a powerful way with words, could hold an entire room with his speech. He'd lend me books, C.S. Lewis, Dostoevsky, even poetry, taught me to think differently, made me feel special. I'd go to church just to watch him preach. He'd take the entire congregation from laughter to tears in minutes. And I'd think, proud and in love, this man is going to change the world. And he chose me. But then he told me he was going to study to become a full-time pastor. 4 years of seminary at Biola University, in La Mirada, an hour away. 4 years of long-distance relationship. He'd go during the week, come back on weekends. And on the days in between, we'd write letters. Many letters. He had beautiful handwriting, careful words, promises written by hand on lined paper. I kept every single one in shoeboxes under my bed. Boxes and boxes of I love you, you're mine, we'll get married as soon as I graduate. The long-distance relationship was harder than I imagined. I was too insecure, too jealous, too dependent. I'd call him 3, 4 times a day. Needed to know where he was, with whom, doing what. The anxiety ate me alive. In his second year there, I got so desperate that I enrolled to study near him. Pedagogy in the same area. Got a partial scholarship. Packed my bags, went. Thought that if I was close, the pain would stop. It lasted 3 weeks. Sitting in that classroom, I realized, I'm not here because I want to be a teacher. I'm here because I can't exist away from him. I don't have my own life. I don't have an identity. I'm just a satellite orbiting around him. I went back home. My dad came to get me, without asking questions, and I cried the entire 2 hours back to LA. And it was during that period, I found out years later, much later, that he cheated on me for the first time. Not with Autumn, with another girl from the Biola campus. I didn't have proof at the time, but my body knew. You know when something changes, even if you can't explain it? He'd come back from breaks different, distant, cold, avoided my eyes. His cell phone was always off, going straight to voicemail. The battery died, he'd say without looking me in the eyes. I forgot to charge it, but I'd see the screen lit up in his pants pocket when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We broke up for a few months in his last year. I confronted him, not directly because I was afraid of the answer, but I asked if there was someone else. He didn't confess, but he also didn't deny. He just stayed silent, looking at the floor of his parents' living room, and that silence told me everything. I lost 15 pounds in a month, stopped eating, stopped sleeping, cried until I had no more tears. My mother, who had just completed 2 years sober after fighting alcohol for a decade, held my hands at the kitchen table and said in Spanish, Mija, listen, if he makes you feel like this now, before you're even married, imagine 10 years from now. A man who loves you doesn't make you cry like this. But in September 1999, after 5 years together, Caleb came back. Showed up at my door in East LA with a bouquet of roses and tears in his eyes. Said he had been immature, selfish, that time apart had made him grow, that he had graduated from seminary and was ready to build a life with me. Asked for a second chance. And I, in love, emotionally dependent, said yes before he even finished speaking. A month later, we got engaged. 2 months later, on December 19th, 1999, at noon, at Calvary Chapel in Orange County, we got married. The wedding was simple, very simple. We didn't have money. I cleaned the church hall on the morning of my own ceremony, at 7 in the morning, on my knees scrubbing the floor with my sister Val. I was wearing a sweatsuit, flip-flops, curlers in my hair. My wedding shoes were borrowed from the maid of honor. The dress, bought on clearance at Macy's. The one-bedroom apartment we rented in Santa Ana only had a mattress on the floor, a white plastic table, a used microwave. But I was happy. I looked at him at the altar and thought, it was worth waiting 5 years. It was worth forgiving. Now we are one. And you know what's craziest? The first year was wonderful, genuinely wonderful. He'd wake up at 5 in the morning every day to pray and read the Bible at the kitchen table. He'd go to the gym in the neighborhood, come back at 7, shower, and make breakfast for both of us. Scrambled eggs, toast with butter, orange juice, hot coffee. He'd call me from the bedroom. Claire, come on. Breakfast is ready. We'd eat together, talk about everything, plan the future. How many kids we'd have, where we'd live, what kind of church we'd lead together. He had gotten a position as assistant pastor at a Calvary chapel in Orange County. Everything seemed to be falling into place. I thought, looking at him from across that plastic table, my mother was wrong. This is going to work. This man loves me. But in 2002, something started to change. I began feeling pains in my stomach. Strong, sharp pains, burning like fire every time I drank something acidic. Orange juice, coffee, soda, anything. I was 26 years old, worked as an elementary school teacher at a public school in Santa Ana, and was too busy to stop. I'll go to the doctor during summer break in July. I'd say every time the pain appeared and doubled me over in the teacher's lounge. The kids were taking state tests. We were in the middle of the school year. I couldn't miss. They needed me. But the pains didn't wait for July. And when I finally walked into that office at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles in 2003, the doctor looked at the test results and then looked at me with an expression that froze me. "Are you married?" he asked. "Do you have children?" My heart raced. Why was he asking this? "I've been married for 3 years. I don't have children yet." "Why? What's happening?" He took a deep breath, put the tests on the table, and said the words that changed everything. "You have gastric adenocarcinoma, stomach cancer, advanced stage. We need to remove your stomach completely within 15 days, maximum, or you won't survive." I didn't even know it was possible to live without a stomach. That was the first thing that went through my head when the doctor said those words. The second was, how am I going to tell Caleb this? The third, I'm going to die. I'm 26 years old, and I'm going to die. Caleb was in the waiting room. When I came out of the office, he was reading a magazine, calm, not imagining that our lives had just completely changed. I sat down next to him and couldn't speak. I just started crying. He put down the magazine, hugged me, and whispered, "What happened? What did the doctor say?" And when I finally managed to say the words, cancer, stomach, surgery, 15 days, I saw his face change. The blood drained. He went pale. And then he said, "Everything's going to be okay. God is in control. We're going to get through this together." The next 15 days were a blur. Tests, more tests, endoscopy, CT scan, biopsy, consultations with oncologists, surgeons, nutritionists, everyone explaining what was going to happen. They were going to remove my entire stomach, part of my esophagus, part of my intestine. They were going to reconnect everything. I'd need to eat tiny portions for the rest of my life. I might need chemotherapy and radiation after. I heard all of that like I was underwater. Nothing seemed real. The night before surgery, I wanted to go to church. I wanted to sing. I wanted to worship. It might seem strange, but I felt a strange peace, a certainty that God was with me. Caleb said it wasn't a good idea, that I needed to rest. But I insisted. I couldn't go. And that was one of the first small things that stuck in my head. Why didn't he want me to go? Why didn't he let me do the one thing that would bring me comfort? The surgery lasted hours. I woke up with a nasogastric tube going down my throat to my intestine. I'd have it for 8 days, feeding directly, unable to eat anything by mouth. The pain was unbearable, not just in my abdomen, but in my back, like someone was cutting me from the inside with a hot knife. I weighed 128 pounds when I entered the hospital. When I left, 8 days later, I weighed 106. 22 pounds, more than a pound a day. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Caleb stayed with me all 8 days, slept in the hospital in the chair next to my bed, held my hand when I screamed in pain, called the nurses when I needed them. And I looked at him and thought, he loves me. He really loves me. I was wrong to doubt. I was discharged. I went home. I started eating like a baby, liquid, then soft, then solid in tiny pieces. I'd choke a lot. Had to chew each piece 40, 50 times. It was exhausting. The oncologist recommended chemotherapy and radiation. "You're very young," he said. "We need to make sure we eliminated any remaining cancer cells. Your survival chances increase significantly." Caleb didn't want me to do it. He argued with the doctor in front of me. "She's already suffered enough. Why subject her to more of this?" But I decided to do it. It was my life. My decision. I started daily chemotherapy at UCLA Medical Center and radiation shortly after. And that's when everything started to fall apart. Chemotherapy destroyed me. I vomited constantly. Couldn't eat. My weight plummeted more. 106 pounds, 98 pounds, 90 pounds. My hair started falling out in handfuls. I'd run my hand through it and entire strands would come out. Caleb shaved my head one night in silence while I cried. I started wearing colorful scarves, tried to put on makeup, wear pretty earrings, pretend everything was okay, but it wasn't. Then my immunity plummeted. I caught a common cold and my body had no defense at all. I had to be hospitalized in reverse isolation, where people protect themselves from me, but to protect me from any external contamination. I received leukocyte transfusions, injections in my navel, many injections. My veins were necrotic from chemotherapy. Each injection was torture. It burned like fire. The doctors decided to place a central catheter, and during placement, they punctured my lung. Pneumothorax. More pain, more suffering. I weighed 84 pounds. It was during this period that I woke up one morning with twisted hands and a paralyzed mouth. Couldn't move my fingers. Couldn't close my mouth properly. I screamed for my mother-in-law, Margaret, who was with me those days because Caleb couldn't stay. "I can't stand to see you wasting away like this," he had said. Margaret called the doctors. 5 specialists came to examine me. MRI, spinal tap, CT scan. Nobody knew what had happened. I ended up in a wheelchair, used diapers. The nurses cried when they saw me. "It's very hard to see you like this, Claire," one of them said. My vital signs were stable. My intestine had started working again, a prerequisite for hospital discharge. So they released me. Wheelchair, paralyzed, no diagnosis. But Caleb had an important event at church, so he took me to get a haircut first. What little had grown back. I bought a light blue circle skirt, the smallest I could find because I was skeletal. He carried me in his arms to the hairdresser. We cut it really short. We went to the event. People looked at me with pity. I could barely hold my head up straight. After that, he took me to a holistic rehabilitation clinic in the California countryside. It was expensive, very expensive. There was no room for a companion. The room was tiny. I couldn't walk and the wheelchair didn't fit. I had to drag myself holding on to the walls to get to the bathroom. But the food was natural, vegetarian. Hydrotherapy, massages, natural treatments, and slowly, very slowly, movement returned. First my arms, then my legs, but then my face paralyzed again. And I couldn't paralyze my face because I needed to eat, chew, swallow without choking. Caleb visited me on weekends, and on one of those visits, I confronted him. "Why are you being so strange with me? I know it's hard. I know I'm not the same anymore, but I need you to be here." He looked away, stayed silent for too long. And then he said something that broke me. "It's hard for me, Claire, because every time I see you, you're different. Every time it's a different version of you. And I don't know how to deal with that." I was discharged from the clinic without an official diagnosis of what had caused the paralysis. They suspected vitamin B12 deficiency, common in people who remove their stomach. I went back home, fragile, too thin, bald, but alive. Caleb suggested we move to a quieter town, away from the LA and Orange County hustle, so I could recover better. He requested a transfer in his denomination, and we went to a small coastal town near Ventura. The year was 2004. I thought we were starting over. I thought the worst had passed. But it was there, in that quiet town by the Pacific, that everything really started to fall apart. Because it was there that Caleb met Autumn. Autumn attended the Calvary Chapel, where Caleb had been assigned as assistant pastor. She was about 19, 20 years old. She lived with her mother and an aunt in a small, chaotic house near the beach. The family was dysfunctional. The mother wasn't married, had several problems, debts, constant instability, and part of Caleb's pastoral work was precisely to help families like that. Bring food baskets, do Bible studies, listen, pray, give spiritual support. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It was normal. Part of the ministry. Caleb had always been very dedicated to helping people. He visited the sick, counseled couples, helped those in need, and Autumn's family clearly needed help. So when he said he was going to bring them a food basket, or that he was going to make a pastoral visit, I didn't question it. I trusted him. He was a pastor, a man of God. Why would I doubt? But gradually, I started noticing small things. Subtle, strange. Autumn's mother and aunt were very warm with me at first. They'd hug me at church, ask how I was recovering. But after a few months, they started avoiding me. They'd greet Caleb with long hugs, big smiles, but with me they were cold, distant, like I was invisible. And Autumn? Autumn barely looked in my direction, but she looked at Caleb. A lot. I saw it. From across the church hall, I saw it. The way she'd tilt her head when he preached, how she'd smile when he passed by, how she'd find excuses to stay near him after services. Pastor Caleb, can I ask a question about the sermon? Pastor Caleb, can you pray for my family? Always something. Always a reason. His cell phone started getting strange, turned off at random times. Voicemail. Always voicemail. Battery died again? I'd ask, trying to sound casual. Yeah, forgot to charge it. He'd respond, but without looking me in the eyes. At night, mainly. Or when I'd go make visits with him and step away for a few minutes. Suddenly, voicemail. And once, when I finally got through to him, I heard background noise, female laughter. Where are you? I asked. At a church member's house, he said too quickly. I have to go. I'll call you later. And he hung up. I started feeling that thing in my stomach again. Not the physical pain. I didn't even have a stomach anymore. But that tightness, that knot, that feeling that something's wrong, but you can't prove it. My intuition was screaming, but my mouth stayed shut, because I was afraid to confront and find out I was right, afraid of being called crazy, paranoid, jealous, afraid of destroying the marriage because of an intuition. One day, Autumn had a fight with her mother and ran to the highway. Caleb went to get her, brought her to our house. She slept in our guest room. I prepared the room, put clean sheets, offered tea. The next morning, Caleb woke up early, like always, made breakfast for her, and took her to the bus stop. I stayed home, looking at the bed where she had slept, and thought, why does this bother me so much? He's just helping. It's his job. But then came the day I found the receipts. I wasn't one to snoop through his things. I never was. But I was looking for documents for taxes, and in his office, in a payment folder, I found them. Payment receipts for transportation, shuttle bus to the university, in Autumn's name, month after month. He was paying for her transportation to college. I stared at those papers, unable to breathe properly, because I had asked him for help months before. I was taking psychology classes at UCLA, trying to build a future, trying to be more than the pastor's wife who almost died of cancer. And I had asked if he could help pay for my transportation. It was $40 a week. I can't, Claire, he had said. We're tight. You understand, right? And I understood. I put the receipts back in the folder. Didn't say anything. Not yet. Weeks later, his mother, Margaret, called asking for financial help. Something related to an electricity or water bill. I don't remember exactly. Caleb hung up and said, "We can't help my mom right now. We don't have it." And that's when I couldn't take it anymore. I looked at him and asked, my voice shaking, "We don't have it? Or you've already spent it helping other people?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Autumn," I said. "You're paying for her transportation to college, but you couldn't pay for mine, and now you can't help your own mother." His face changed, turned red. He got up from the chair, grabbed the phone, and called Autumn's mother right in front of me. "Claire is saying that I pay for Autumn's transportation. Is that true? Did you say something to her?" He was yelling, putting pressure, as if I were crazy, as if I had made it up. I stood there, paralyzed, listening to him twist the situation, make it seem like I was the problem. My relationship with him started to change after that. It got cold, distant. We still had meals together. He still made breakfast, still set the table, but there was a heavy silence between us, a silence that said things neither of us wanted to say out loud. We were a pastoral couple. Our marriage was forever. Divorce wasn't an option, so we just coexisted. Physical presence, but emotional distance. I had gone back to teaching by then, I was recovering physically, hair growing back, weight going up slowly. I went to the gym, painted canvases in my spare time, landscapes, butterflies, beautiful things that helped me not think. And when I couldn't paint, I'd go to his preaching. I'd sit in the front rows, listening to that voice that once hypnotized me, trying to remember why I had fallen in love with him. But at night, lying next to him, I'd stay awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking, something's wrong. Something's very wrong here. Sexually, we had become completely distant. Since the illness, almost nothing. He'd say he couldn't, that it was difficult, that he needed time. And I, still recovering, still fragile, accepted it. But now I wondered, is the problem me, or is he getting it somewhere else? It got to a point where I called my parents in LA and said, something strange is happening here. I can't explain it, but there is. My father and mother came to spend New Year's with us, and during those days, even they felt it. The tension, the coldness. Are you guys okay? My mother asked quietly when we were alone in the kitchen. I didn't know how to answer. In February 2006, I decided I needed to leave that town. Go back to LA, do my college properly, have my life back. I couldn't continue there, suffocating, pretending everything was fine. I enrolled again for psychology at UCLA, managed to resume, and told Caleb I was going during the week, coming back on weekends. He didn't like it, but I went. It was during this period, living with Iris during the week and coming back on weekends, that I got pregnant. February 11th, 2006. I took the test, it came back positive, and I was confused. Happy? Scared? I had never dreamed of being a mother. I always wanted to be an independent woman, a professional, but there it was, pregnant. After everything, the cancer, the chemotherapy, the paralysis, my body had done this. Life. I told Caleb on a trip where he had been invited to speak. I thought he'd be happy. We'd been together for almost 12 years, married for almost 7. But he freaked out. He went pale, nervous, distant. What I saw on his face wasn't happiness. It was panic. 8 weeks later, I lost the baby. The miscarriage happened at home. Heavy bleeding. Cramps that doubled me over. Caleb took me to the hospital, but it was too late. The baby was gone. 8 weeks. I hadn't even told anyone yet. Just him. And now there was nothing left to tell. I went back home empty. Outside and inside. I don't know how to explain exactly what I felt. It wasn't just sadness for the loss. It was a strange feeling of relief mixed with guilt. Because I was never sure if I wanted to be a mother. And now the decision had been taken from me. But at the same time, losing that, losing the possibility, hurt in a way I didn't expect. Especially because Caleb didn't cry, didn't seem affected, just said, God knows what he's doing. Maybe it wasn't the right time. After that, something changed again between us. Like the loss of the baby had extinguished the last spark that remained. We talked about separating. Sitting in the living room, late at night, finally saying what neither of us had the courage to say. Do you still love me? I asked. He took too long to answer. I don't know, he finally said. And me. I don't know either. But we were a pastoral couple. He was a pastor of a church. I was the pastor's wife. People looked at us as an example. How would we explain a divorce? What would people think? What would the denomination leadership do? So we decided to try. One more time. Let's give it time. Let's see if it gets better. And we continued, pretending, smiling at services, eating together in silence at home. We even moved again. To a bigger house. A beautiful house, actually. 3 living rooms, closet, guest room, a soap opera house. I had grown up in simple houses in East LA, somewhere it rained inside when the roof leaked. And now I lived in a house like this. We should have been happy. We even bought a dog, a 45-day-old golden retriever, to help me with my emotional recovery. We named him Atlas. He became the son I didn't have. But the beautiful house didn't fix the broken marriage. And Autumn was still there. Still attended church, still called Caleb for pastoral help, and I started noticing a pattern. They, Autumn, her mother, her aunt, were extremely affectionate with him, but with me, ice. They'd avoid me. When I arrived, they'd leave. When I spoke, they'd ignore me. It was like I was an obstacle, a nuisance. And Caleb? Caleb didn't notice, or pretended not to notice. His cell phone kept going to voicemail, mainly in the afternoon and evening. I'd call. Voicemail. Call again. Voicemail. Hours later, he'd return. Sorry, I was on a pastoral visit and the cell was off. Always the same excuse. Always the same words. And I, again, would hold it in. Swallow it. Because confronting meant admitting. And admitting meant my marriage was over. In 2006, I dropped out of psychology college again. Didn't have the emotional structure, couldn't concentrate, but I started taking painting classes. Art, large canvases, vivid colors, landscapes, butterflies. I'd paint for hours. It was the only thing that made me feel alive, the only thing that organized the chaos inside me. I'd paint, and for a few hours, didn't think about Caleb, didn't think about Autumn, didn't think about anything except the colors on the canvas. It was in August 2006 that everything exploded. August 31st, a Thursday. I remember every detail of that day. It had been a normal day. Breakfast together. He left for work. I stayed home. In the afternoon, we took our siesta, that nap after lunch we always took. I woke up first, went to his office to work on some college projects on the computer. He woke up, sat next to me on the exercise equipment we had there, and asked a strange question. What are you going to do with your life? I looked at him, confused. What do you mean? What am I going to do with my life? I'm going to finish my degree, do a master's, be a college professor. Why are you asking this? He took a deep breath, looked at the floor, and said, because it's going to be my last year as a pastor. My heart raced. What? Why? You've been saying this for a while, but why now? He stayed silent. A long silence. Heavy. And then, because I fell. Fell? I repeated, not understanding. Fell how? Tripped? He shook his head and said the words that shattered my world. I committed adultery, and she's pregnant. I don't remember getting up from the chair. Don't remember going to the bedroom. I only remember being on the floor, kneeling, screaming so loud my throat hurt, yelling, sobbing, my entire body convulsing. I screamed and couldn't stop. Caleb came after me, tried to touch me, and I screamed even louder. Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Who is it? I managed to ask between sobs. But I already knew. Deep down, I always knew. Autumn, he said quietly. And everything made sense. The cell phone turned off. The payments. Their coldness toward me. His reaction when I got pregnant. Everything. Everything made sense all at once, and it was like the floor had opened up beneath me. I left the house that night, grabbed the car keys, still crying, still screaming, and drove to a bar. I had never drunk in my life. Never. My mother was an alcoholic. I had seen what alcohol did. I had sworn I'd never touch it. But that night, I sat at the bar counter in Ventura, with my face swollen from crying so much, and ordered, a tequila, please. The bartender looked at me. I must have looked horrible, and said something I never forgot. Everything passes. He put the shot in front of me. I drank it. It burned. I ordered another, and another. I also ordered a portion of nachos, but barely touched it, just drank. And for the first time in weeks, the pain in my chest lessened a little. It didn't go away, but it became bearable. The next day, Thursday, I had a medical evaluation appointment to check my work medical leave status. I had been out for years because of cancer. The doctor cleared me, said I was fit to return to teaching, and I broke down again. Cried so much in the office that the doctor, worried, asked me what had happened. I told her everything. She looked at me with compassion and said, I've been through this. I know how it is. I'm going to give you 1 more month of leave. You're not ready. Iris took me in. My dear friend, who had been my maid of honor. She took me to her house, and that's where I met the medication. Klonopin, anxiety medication, to sleep, to not feel. She gave me a pill. Take it. It'll help you. I took it, and I blacked out, slept for hours. When I woke up, I didn't remember anything, just emptiness. On Friday, I went back home. Caleb was there, cried, begged for forgiveness. Claire, forgive me. Please. I messed up. I messed up so bad, but I love you. We can get through this. And I, still in shock, still not processing properly, took all our wedding portraits from the walls and started breaking them, one by one. Threw them on the floor, glass shattering. Atlas, our dog, barking desperately, running through the house. I'd break and scream and cry, and Caleb just stood there, watching. On Saturday morning, he went to preach at the church where Autumn attended, the church where she was sitting, pregnant with his child, while only I, he, and her mother knew. I stayed home, picked up my cell phone, called my mother in Los Angeles, and said, "Mom, Caleb cheated on me. He got another woman pregnant, and I'm going to kill myself." I hung up and took the entire box of Klonopin that Iris had given me. Block 5, The Awakening by God. And I believe it was by God. My mother managed to call Iris. Iris managed to call Caleb. And Caleb, in the middle of preaching, in the middle of the service, answered. He ran home, found me almost unconscious, dragged me to the car, took me to the nearest clinic. What I remember, vaguely, is him yelling at the attendants. She took Klonopin, the whole box, and someone responding coldly, "Then she'll get what she wanted." But I didn't. Thank God I didn't. I was out for a week, vegetating, not knowing who I was, where I was, what had happened. My mother-in-law, Margaret, dropped everything in the countryside where she lived and came to stay with me, cook, care for me. She was always incredible to me. Always. Even knowing her son had destroyed me, she loved me. I remember waking up a few times and seeing her there, sitting next to me, holding my hand. When I finally came to, the first thing I felt wasn't relief at being alive. It was anger. Anger at myself for failing. Anger at him for taking me to that point. Anger at God for not letting me die. And one night, still desperate, still broken, I tried again. This time different. Hypothermia. I put on a fleece bathrobe, waited for everyone to sleep, and headed toward the Pacific Ocean. It was winter. The water was freezing. I was going to walk in and let the cold take me. But Caleb woke up, noticed I wasn't in bed, looked for me around the house, ran outside, found me almost at the water, pulled me back, held me while I screamed, let me go, please!" He carried me back home. I cried and punched his chest. "Why won't you let me go? Why did you do this to me? Why?" In the days that followed, something in me started to change. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't a divine light or a cinematic moment of clarity. It was more subtle, more tired. I simply didn't have the energy to die anymore. Dying required effort, and I had nothing left inside me. So I started asking myself, what if, instead of trying to end the pain, I tried to get out of it? I needed to know, needed to see. I insisted with Caleb to take me to Autumn's house. He tried to convince me not to go. "Claire, it won't help. It'll only make it worse." But I insisted so much, that he gave in. He took me. We knocked on the door. Her mother answered. Autumn was inside. And when they saw me, they confirmed everything. Showed photos. Photos of the two of them together. At her birthday party, him hugging her from behind, smiling, like they were a couple, like I didn't exist. I looked at Autumn, pregnant, young, scared, and said something I'm ashamed of to this day. I wish that one day what's happening to me happens to you. I left that house with my legs shaking, got in the car, and Caleb, who had stayed in the car waiting for me, collapsed too. He took the medication I was taking and took several at once. He went out of his mind, disoriented, mumbling things that made no sense, and I, ironically, had to take care of him. After that, my mind started creating survival scenarios. What if I raised the child as if it were mine? What if we moved to another city, far away, where nobody knows our story? What if we start over and pretend none of this happened? I was willing to do anything to not have to face reality, to not have to admit my marriage was over, because admitting meant being alone, and I didn't know how to exist alone. But then, September 13, 2006, 2 weeks after the confession, something inside me said, "You need to go. Now." It wasn't an audible voice. It was more of an urgency, a necessity. I called my father. "Dad, I need to get out of here. Today." He didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm coming." I grabbed my things, clothes, books, some canvases I had painted. Caleb paid for a small moving truck. We loaded everything, and I left. I left still in love, still loving, still dependent. But I left. I went to live with Iris again. And Caleb believed, he told me this later, that it was temporary. That the dust would settle. That I would process, forgive, and come back. Because that's what pastors' wives did, right? They forgave. They stayed. They sustained the ministry. But I didn't come back. And when he realized I was actually moving forward, that I started looking at other men, going out, getting dressed up, living, he changed his narrative. "You're cheating on me," he said on a phone call. "You're betraying me. I'm the victim here." The church leadership started pressuring me for explanations. "Why are you separating? You're a pastoral couple. This is a scandal." I didn't want to expose Caleb, didn't want to destroy his ministry. He was going to have a child to support. He needed the job. And I thought about Jesus, who always knew Judas was the traitor, but never exposed him. So when they pressed me, I lied. I never really loved him. They were satisfied with that, and I left as the villain. In the months that followed, I went into a spiral. Started drinking. A lot. Every day. Clubs in Hollywood, Sunset Strip, Venice Beach. I'd drink until I didn't feel anything anymore. And during the day, I'd take Klonopin to sleep. Sleep so I wouldn't think. Drink so I wouldn't feel. I got tattoos, got piercings, cut my hair super short, then let it grow long. I'd dress up a lot. High heels, heavy makeup, tight clothes. I wanted Caleb to see. Wanted him to see what he'd lost. I'd go out with several men, but I'd always fall in love. Always. I couldn't just hook up. I'd always get emotionally involved, suffer in silence, and drink to drown the rejection. I met toxic men, men who lied, who used drugs, who had other women, and I always chose those. Because deep down, I thought that's what I deserved. I thought I was the problem. I dropped out of psychology for good. Couldn't do it anymore. Worked temporary jobs, lived off favors at friends' houses. My family supported me as they could. My father, my mother, Val, Theo, all trying to help me not sink completely. But I was determined to sink, determined to self-destruct. Because if I destroyed myself alone, at least it would be my choice, not his. It was on one of those nights that I tried cocaine for the first time. A friend said that if you mixed cocaine with alcohol, you wouldn't get drunk. And I wanted to drink without getting drunk. So I used it. All night. Snorting and drinking, snorting and drinking. We didn't have anything going on. We were just friends, but we shared a bed. When I woke up in the early morning, I felt an anguish so big, so heavy, so suffocating that I thought I was going to die. And I heard a voice, clear, insistent, scary. "Jump. Jump out the window. End this pain. Jump." I was on the 6th floor of a building in downtown LA. The window was right there. It would be quick. It would be easy. I got up, went to the bathroom so I wouldn't wake my friend, and stayed there kneeling, shaking, with the voice hammering in my head. Jump, jump, jump. And then from somewhere deep inside me came a verse I hadn't heard in years. "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." I repeated it, again, and again, and again, until the voice stopped, until the anguish lessened, until I could breathe again. I went back to bed, never told my friend what had happened, but that night, something changed. I realized there were forces trying to destroy me, and that if I didn't stop, they would succeed. But knowing I needed to stop and actually stopping were two completely different things. I kept drinking, kept going out, kept getting involved with the wrong men. In 2015, I did so many crazy things that to this day I have trouble remembering some nights. I'd wake up in places I didn't recognize, with people I barely knew, and always, with that emptiness in my chest that not all the alcohol in the world could fill. In 2016, I tried to take a break, went a few months without drinking, but on my birthday, I relapsed, drank everything I saw in front of me, and then relapsed again, and again. Until in 2017, I met someone. I'll call him Marcus. He seemed different at first. Artist, massage therapist, spiritual. Said he lived with a friend. But I found out later the friend was his ex-wife he still lived with, and still slept with, while he was with me, and with dozens of other women. I sank into that relationship like it was quicksand. The more I tried to get out, the deeper I went. He used marijuana all the time. His house was always full of people using drugs, drinking, pool parties. And I, trying to rebuild myself, enrolled in nutrition, resumed theater, singing lessons, wanted to be someone again. But how could I be a nutritionist, someone who takes care of health, if I was an alcoholic living at drug parties? In January 2018, I looked around that house and thought, either I leave now or I die here. I had done almost 2 years of intensive therapy during that period. And therapy had given me enough strength to do something I had never been able to do before. end a relationship even while being in love. In the past, I was always the one being left, always abandoned. But this time, I was the one who said, "I can't do this anymore. I need to leave." He cried. I cried, but I left. My things stayed there. He lived in the countryside, about 2 hours from LA. A week later, I texted saying I was coming to get my things on a Saturday. He said he was going to a show in LA that day, so the house would be empty. Perfect. I took the bus, but when I arrived, he was there, in the pool area, serving breakfast to another woman, exactly like he used to do with me. I walked in, greeted the woman politely, even kissed her on the cheek, and then I looked at him with all the contempt I could muster. I came to get my things. He was startled, tried to follow me inside. "Claire, it's not what you're thinking." I cut him off. "I'm not thinking anything. I just want my things." I took everything, clothes, books, canvases, and still, pathetic, desperate, I begged him to stay with me. I begged, cried, pleaded, and he said no. That was humiliating, but it was also liberating. Because for the first time, I saw with absolute clarity, I was addicted to toxic men. I was addicted to toxic love, and I needed to treat this dependency the same way I treated alcohol, with professional help, with support groups, with emotional sobriety. January 2018 was the last month I drank. The last month I sought relief in a bottle. I went to AA meetings wearing a hat and sunglasses, dying of shame. Went to therapy twice a week. Went to church again, not the same denomination as Caleb, but a different community, more welcoming. And slowly, very slowly, I started reconnecting with myself, with God, with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could have a life worth living. In July 2018, Marcus tried to come back, sent messages, called, and I, in an emotional relapse, met up with him. We hooked up. But the next day, I looked at him and felt nothing, no passion, no dependency, just tiredness. I recorded voice messages saying everything I had never had the courage to say. All the betrayals, all the lies, how he had used me. And then I blocked his number. He tried to contact me through my mother. I blocked him everywhere, and never spoke to him again. That same month, a friend invited me to visit a town in the California countryside where he had an inn. Ojai, a quiet little town in the mountains, full of artists, hippies, spiritualists, the complete opposite of LA. I went for a weekend, and when I got there, the mountains, the silence, the orange sunset setting behind the peaks, something inside me said, "This is it. You need to be here." I went back to LA, talked to my parents. "I want to move to Ojai. I need to get out of here. I need silence. I need peace." They supported me, as they always had. In December 2018, I went to Ojai and rented a small country house, a cottage in the middle of nowhere. In January 2019, I quit my temporary job in LA, put everything I owned in the back of my friend's pickup truck, a mattress, an old refrigerator, a donated closet, grabbed my cat, and went. When he dropped me off there and left, I closed the door of the empty house and thought, my God, what's going to happen to me now? There was no internet, no furniture. I didn't know anyone. It was 4 miles from the nearest town. But for the first time in decades, I felt peace. Real peace. Not the false peace of alcohol or relationships, but the peace of finally being alone with myself. I made furniture from pallets I found, painted wooden crates from the farmer's market and used them as shelves, decorated the walls with my own paintings, planted herbs in the yard. There were over 30 mulberry trees on the property. I'd wake up, pick mulberries, make juice, have coffee looking at the mountains. And for the first time in my life, I enjoyed my own company. I wasn't running away from myself. I was finding myself. I opened the house as an Airbnb to be able to pay rent. Clay cottage refuge. People would come, stay a few days, and always say the same thing. This place is magical. And it was. Not because of the house, but because of the energy, the simplicity, the peace you felt being there. I also started seeing clients as a nutritionist. Some patients came to my house, others I visited, and slowly I built a life. Small, simple, but mine. My parents decided to move to the area. Then my sister Val with her family. My brother Theo. My aunt and uncle. Gradually, 12 people from my family moved to Ojai and nearby towns. because they saw in me what peace had done, saw that it was possible to start over, that it was possible to choose a different life, and they wanted that too. We'd gather for dinners, for walks, for sunsets in the mountains, and for the first time, I had a functional family. Sober, present. I stayed alone for almost 4 years. 4 years without dating, without getting involved, without seeking validation from men. And in those 4 years, I learned something fundamental. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was already complete. Broken, scarred, imperfect, but complete. And when I finally felt ready to be in a relationship again, it was from a different place. Not from lack, but from wholeness. In 2022, I got COVID-19, and with COVID came a deep, dark, suffocating depression. Suicidal ideation again. Difficulty getting out of bed, showering, making food. My family supported me. Friends brought food. But it was art that saved me again. I'd paint. Murals on the walls, huge canvases. I couldn't stop painting. And art, once again, organized my chaos, integrated my fragments, brought me back. And it was in July of that year, July 15th, 2022, that I met Julian. Julian is everything I never knew I needed. He's black, has dreadlocks down to his waist, a smile that lights up any room, and a soul so good that sometimes I wonder if he's real. He's also an artist. Paints, makes sculptures, plays music. And he's 15 years younger than me. When we met at a local art gallery in Ojai, he was 33 and I was 45. But age was never an issue. The connection was immediate. What attracted me to him wasn't just his looks, though I've always found men like him beautiful. It was his kindness, the way he helps anyone he sees in need. The elderly neighbor who needs help carrying groceries? Julian's there. Someone with a broken-down car on the road? Julian stops. He has a natural, spontaneous goodness that expects nothing in return. And after years surrounded by men who only took, being with someone who only gave was strange, but wonderful. In the first few months, I was afraid. Afraid he'd be like the others. Afraid the mask would fall and reveal something horrible underneath. But as the months passed, the mask didn't fall. Because there was no mask. Julian is genuine. What you see is what he is. He doesn't lie, doesn't hide, doesn't manipulate. And that, for someone like me who spent decades in toxic relationships, was revolutionary. Our relationship isn't perfect. We disagree. We have difficult moments. He has quirks that irritate me, and I have traumas that sometimes affect how I react to small things. But the difference is that now, I understand that relationships are built. They're not found ready-made like Lego pieces that fit perfectly. They're two imperfect individuals choosing, every day, to build something together. And we do this with a simple question. Is this good for the relationship? Not just, is it good for me? Or, is it good for you? But, is it good for us? And this shift in perspective, from I to we without losing the I in the process, changed everything. I don't erase myself anymore. Don't live for the other. But I'm not selfish either. There's balance. There's partnership. There's love that nourishes, not destroys. Julian supports me in everything. When I wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety, he wakes up with me. When I have panic attacks about health, the cancer trauma never completely went away, he holds my hand and says, I'm here. We'll figure this out together. Once, when I had a serious infection and was terrified, he said, leave your phone on next to mine. If you need to go to the hospital in the middle of the night, I'll take you. I won't sleep deeply. I'll stay alert. And he did. We danced together. Go to art exhibitions. Paint side by side. Him with his sculptures, me with my murals. We go out to see local bands play. Walk through the Ojai mountains at sunset. And in these simple moments, I think, so this is it. This is what love should be like. Light, easy, safe. I don't have jealousy anymore. Don't have that suffocating anxiety of, where is he? With whom? Why didn't he respond? Because there's trust. Real trust, built on honesty, not on emotional dependency. And that freedom, the freedom to love without desperation, is something I had never experienced before. Today, at 48 years old, I'm recognized as a visual artist in the region. I do murals for homes, businesses, public spaces in Ojai and Ventura County. My style is full of vivid colors, nature, butterflies, symbols of transformation. because that's what my art represents: transformation. Taking pain, chaos, trauma, and transforming it into something beautiful. Into something that heals not just me, but others too. I continue working as a nutritionist, specialized in serving women. Women who've been through trauma, through abusive relationships, through illness, through loss. I understand their pain because I lived it. And when they sit in front of me and say, "I don't know if I can get out of this," I look them in the eyes and say, "I also thought I couldn't, but I did. And you will too." I started giving art therapy workshops, transforming lemons into lemonade. Groups of women gather at my house once a month. We paint, talk, cry, laugh, and slowly they rediscover themselves. They realize that pain isn't the end, it's just part of the journey, and that it's possible to create beauty even, especially, from pain. I have 7 years of sobriety now, 7 years without a drop of alcohol, and it wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to drink so badly that my hand shook holding the glass of water, imagining it was vodka. There were parties I had to leave early because the temptation was too strong. There were nights I cried because the emptiness seemed unbearable without the chemical crutch. But I resisted, one day at a time. And today I'm free. Free from the bottle. Free from dependency. Free from self-destruction. About Caleb, I don't hold a grudge. It took years to get here, but I did. He had the child with Autumn, a boy who today must be almost 19 years old. I don't know how his life is now. Didn't try to find out. Don't stalk social media. Don't ask mutual acquaintances. Because I understood something fundamental. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Forgiveness means letting go. Stopping carrying the weight of anger, resentment, revenge. And I let go. Not for him, for me. I look back and see a 17-year-old woman who lost her first boyfriend tragically. A 26-year-old woman who survived cancer against all odds. A 27-year-old woman who was betrayed at the most vulnerable moment of her life. A woman who spent 12 years drowning in alcohol trying to forget. A woman who tried to kill herself 3 times. And I also see a 48-year-old woman who's alive, sober, loved, fulfilled. A woman who transformed every bitter lemon life gave her into something sweet, into art, into purpose, into help for other women. I'm no longer that insecure girl from East LA who lived for others. I'm no longer the pastor's wife who accepted crumbs of affection. I'm no longer the drunk woman who destroyed herself in Hollywood bars. I'm Claire, artist, nutritionist, survivor, warrior, and for the first time in my life, that's enough. I am enough. If you're reading this, or watching this, and you're trapped in a toxic relationship, in chemical dependency, in a depression that seems hopeless, I want you to know, the door is there. You just need the courage to turn the handle. It won't be easy. It will hurt. A lot. You'll fall. You'll relapse. You'll doubt. But on the other side of that door, there's a version of you that's free, that breathes without weight on her chest, that wakes up without fear, that loves without desperation. And if I made it, after everything I went through, everything I did, all the times I gave up, believe me, you can too. Life doesn't stop giving you lemons, but you can learn to make lemonade. You can learn to make something sweet, beautiful, meaningful, even, especially, with what's bitter. I did. And you can too. The question isn't if you'll make it. It's when you'll decide to start. That decision is in your hands. It always has been, and it always will be.